Oh man, I turned my laptop. I'm so sorry. Ooh, welcome to the Quick Stop F1 podcast. My name is Thandie. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us. Joining me as ever is my co-host and co-founder, Nyasha and Thandie. Wait, you frozen?
This is good.
Well, that was stupid.
That could have been the best intro in the world. I don't know. Like, that literally could have been incredible. I didn't hear a word of it, and you know what? It's probably for the best. But I'm sure you introduced me well. Thank you so much, Thandie. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Absolutely marvelous. I'm feeling good. Slightly confused. Slightly annoyed. Slightly deflated, and I think that kind of sums up most people's experiences from this race. So I'm looking forward to getting into it. Before you introduce our guest, let me just remind everyone, if you're watching this, please give us a 5-star review on Spotify, Apple review, podcasts. Make sure you're leaving a review. They really help. And like and subscribe to the video. And if you want no adverts and an uninterrupted feed, you can subscribe to our Patreon link in the below. Thank you to all the patrons who have subscribed. Super, super helpful. Thandie, take it away.
So today's guest, we really needed somebody who can give us insight on how it feels to be on the other side. No shade towards this man or his fan base, but we really needed somebody, you know, who's on ground and can tell us how it feels to lose constantly and be disappointed. We've got Vincenzo.
Oh, wow. Yay!
Am I supposed to be happy about that?
I'm so sorry,
I was actually
Vincenzo.
giving you some cheers. Here you go. There you go. We're happy to see you.
Do you know what it is, Vincenzo?
Like
I said we need Vincenzo on because Vincenzo, you know, is a long time Ferrari fan. Like, yours goes deep. Like, your ancestry. We could look at your family tree and we would see a line of, you know, old school Ferrari fans. And so obviously with old school Ferrari fans comes with a lot of old school losses and new school losses apparently. And so we needed somebody who we could relate to. And no offense to you, Vincenzo, but we needed it.
That's okay. I'm here for you.
Do you want to know what the bright side is, Vincenzo? Do you want to know what the bright side is, though?
I'm afraid to ask, but yes, I do.
Australia, because I do stalk you, Australia marks the birth of your daughter. And so, you know...
It does.
Yeah, so positive times.
It was good. Her first birthday coincided with the Australian GP weekend last year. This year was just a week ahead, so her birthday's still coming up, so that's good. And yeah, so it is a good time of year regardless. Yeah. It's always positive when you have blessings like that in your life. It's still just not enjoyable when you're you know, kind of put all your time and effort into watching something that you love so much and that just constantly disappoints you or punches you in the face.
So, how about them Ferraris?
To me, it is like we play this game, we meaning Tifosi, right? The fans, of how badly can they make a mistake each week. It seems to be, you know, one mistake, another mistake, something else happened. I mean, it's always something, right? And this week we had both. We had a little bit of everything. Yeah. I mean,
Vincenzo, I want to ask you.
On the bright side, it wasn't reliability. So
I want to ask you a question, Vincenzo. This is just like personal to me.
Sure.
I just want to know, who would you say your main driver for Ferrari is in your heart? Who is your number one driver?
You know, I will say I'm gonna preempt this with I am not a driver guy. So to me, it's not driver. It's always team over driver for me. But I do like, you know, I like Charles. I liked him since he was, you know, in lower levels and whatnot. I want to see him succeed. Right. Unfortunately, and this hurts me to say, I don't feel like he's really the man. Like you look at him, and you're like, oh, that. Like, you look at Lewis, you're like, dude's the man. You look at Fernando, you're like,
for real, he's
the man, right? I mean, they just have this air about. There's no question as to who's the man. Even to an extent, you look at someone like. Well, not to an extent, but you look at Max. You're like, okay, he's the man. He's got the energy. You know that's the man. With Charles, it just doesn't feel that way, and I feel like Carlos has a little bit of it, but it's done in a very, it feels almost slimy way sometimes, where they're playing a lot of political games in the background, and they're trying to almost lobby. For preference, I want to be number one, and it's like, okay, earn it first, and then come back and be number one. But yeah, I don't know, Charles. I like I said, and I know there's a lot of tifosi that will disagree and that will probably try to assassinate me after hearing this. But I don't know. He's just something about him doesn't feel. And, of course, he's been disappointed, right, consistently with every car he's gotten to this point. So you can't blame him there, but I don't know.
So you're essentially...
yes, I love Charles, and I want to see him succeed.
Okay. So what you're essentially saying is you love Charles, you love what he's about, however, you don't feel that boy has the dog in him to carry.
I don't see the dog in him. Correct.
You don't even see it. There's no dog.
Not even like a corgi or
like a little puppy. Or like maybe a little puppy.
Not even Jack Russell.
Like a little, little ankle biting.
He's like like there was a time when my brother brought back a tadpole, and we nursed this tadpole. I was just so fascinated with tadpole. Little did I know it'd grow up to be a frog. I didn't know what a frog was. Do you know what I mean? That's what he feels like. He's a tadpole, But how soon can a tadpole get us a championship is what Vincenzo is saying, you guys. But do you know what, though, Vincenzo?
What else? Work together. Come on.
What I'll say with you is at least there's this family dynamic. When I asked you... who is like you were insulted at the fact that we even have to talk about one driver or the other. However, what's going on, different strokes for different folks. What's going on in our family is obviously there is a detachment with our fans. There is an us versus another or an other versus us. And so it's quite interesting that throughout, the years and the losses, you guys have always stayed as a family. And I do wonder if Mercedes will always stay like that, or it will very much take a certain driver's side over the team. But anyway, that's just thoughts with Thandie. Do you know what I mean?
Thank you. I'm going to give you a nice thank you.
Nice.
Thank you, Thandie. That was. I feel like did you nap before this podcast today?
I did. I took a nap.
This is crazy. I've never seen you like this in my life. I think, Vincenzo, I think the thing that you always say, right, about Ferrari is that, and I think one of the things that what we saw with maybe when Binotto was talking to Leclerc, maybe after Silverstone last year, and he was pointing at him, is no one's bigger than Ferrari, right? And you're always driving for the team because the team is the biggest thing. And look, they are the biggest team in the sport. So, kind of going off the back of Thandie's point there, and going off of your point, we're only in the third race of the season, but are Ferrari and Charles heading into a loveless marriage of sorts if Charles is walking around like, a scolded child or a spoiled brat because he's not got the toy he deserves or thinks he deserves, and Ferrari maybe don't have the enigmatic leader that, they thought they had with Vettel, they had with Alonso, and obviously Schumacher. I guess, is it the perfect marriage that we thought it would be, or are we looking at something worse?
I would say that with Vasseur, there's a step in the right direction. It seems like the dynamic or the relationship is a lot different, and obviously Charles has experience with Vasseur. So I think there's that it's better. But if technically the project is a failure or is progressing to fail, it's not just this season, right? There's still 2 more seasons before there's any drastic changes. And so that's where it scares me more is this going to be a wash until 26? In that case, I don't see Charles wanting to continue. I mean, could you imagine at that point 7 years of failure, essentially? I mean, and it's spectacular failure, right? It seems every season is spectacular failure after another, one after another, or one problem after another.
No, let's not do this. Let's not do this. Like, I know it probably feels like spectacular failure to you guys. However, there was a time last year when, Ferrari was a team people were looking at. Like, people were like, I actually like the Ferraris. The Ferraris are actually doing well. So there was obviously, a gap of, growth. There was a gap of, improvement, synergy.
Yeah.
Of course. There was, of course. And it early on, we were excited. There was excitement. Unfortunately, the season's very long, and there's a lot of things that can happen. And everything that could happen did happen, right? And I look to even the Monaco failure, the Monaco situation where it's his home race, and this kid can't catch a break, right? There's always something. This time, he finally finishes a race, and they still found a way to screw him over. Those types of things still bother me. Even if we looked at qualifying this past weekend. Yeah. Where it seemed like either Carlos is not obeying whatever orders he's getting, and he's truly throwing a wrench in it, which I think there's a strong possibility that's the case. Or they genuinely just don't know how to communicate within the team, which I also think that's the case. And orders are being confused. I mean, the fact that Charles is getting orders from his engineer after something happens, this is not one time, right? This is consistently happening. I just can't. I can't see how that is as a driver inspiring confidence. I can't see how that not only confidence in the current car, but as in the organization as a whole. And yes, maybe the Ferrari brand is put on a pedestal of, we've got this heritage, and that's great. But when you haven't won anything, a constructors or a drivers championship since 2008, and again, I know that doesn't seem like, oh, okay, well, it's only 15 years. That's 15 years. While you've watched the 2 other teams completely dominate.
I started high school in 2008.
She said that she was in school uniform when Ferrari were winning. And that's making me feel old because I've dropped out of uni in 2008. Jesus Christ.
Up. No.
You were still in uni in 2008?
Is this friendship?
I dropped out. Is this
friendship even appropriate?
Oh, I guess I'm even older.
Anyway.
Well, at times when I'm with you, I don't think it is. No. So I think that, look, Vincenzo, I think it's crazy that, hearing you talk like that. And, I think when, obviously Carlos qualified ahead of Charles this weekend, but he was talking with Fernando and they were having a little giggle about, the Mercedes aren't as slow as they think they are. And a lot of fans of Mercedes and the Mercedes team, they're like, we're in a crisis. This car is not quick enough. We are not, we're not fighting for a championship. And I guess the frustration that Mercedes fans feel, after, a year of not fighting, I guess for you guys, it must feel as if, with all the resources you have and all of the time that you've had to make this car what it should be, I guess those frustrations at everything kind of top to bottom looking like it's not in a cohesive way. Yeah, it just must be really frustrating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's you look at a company that is sole purpose, number one purpose is to drive is fast cars, right? Their entire history is racing. And then you look at another company that is a drinks brand, a marketing company that happens to also race in Formula One and is unbeatable, maybe the fastest car we've ever seen. I saw George Russell said today that he felt like Red Bull was too embarrassed to even show off their full capability, which is scary to even think about.
Yeah,
but
it's embarrassing.
You see something like that, and you just it just gets so disheartening. And it's like we put so much effort into watching, so much of our soul into watching this series go off every week, every other week, whenever it is. Just give me something to be happy about. That's all I want. I just want a little something. There's very little positives to take each week away for us right now. That I would rather be in a situation where you're like, what was it, 2 years ago for Ferrari, where it was like we were fighting for that third, fourth against McLaren. That was actually really enjoyable because we knew we weren't fighting at the top. There was if we got a win, like great. That was a big takeaway. And being able to just see progress was enjoyable. But now when you tasted that little bit, like last year, we tasted really, we flirted with opportunity to be at the top, and then just to see them constantly fail every week after pretty much Monaco. I mean, after Monaco, it was all downhill, I thought. And that's what hurts the most for me. And I use the word hurt because it does. It's like, ugh. Come on, get together.
Vincenzo, I was on the phone to Citizens Advice Bureau today, because I'm a real what? I was on the phone to Citizens.
That's adulting.
Thank you. Yeah, I felt very adulty. So yeah, I was on the phone to Citizens Advice Bureau today, because one thing about me, I'm going to complain and make it everybody else's issue. If you could phone like a Citizens Advice Bureau for Formula One, Vincenzo, what would a call to the Formula One Citizens Advice Bureau? Yeah, I'll be the person on the phone. Ring, ring. Hello, Formula One Citizens Advice Bureau. My name's Thandie speaking. How can I help?
Hi, can you please cut Red Bull's technical budget by 50%?
I'm just gonna have to put you on hold, sir. Sorry, you said you were phoning about Ferrari.
No.
Excuse me. Hello.
Yes.
He's another one phoning about Red Bull. Okay. Cut the phone.
Hello.
Because it's not worth it. It's not worth complaining.
I know.
That was a lesson. But yeah, I get it. And you know what? I just want you to know that Quick Stop F1 is a place for your complaints. We are here to take your complaints, to make it comedy, and to laugh at your problems. Because, that's what we do here. We laugh at each other's problems.
I feel like we've invited Vincenzo on here. Like, you introduced him as, hi, we're gonna get this guy on because his team are a bunch of losers, and we need someone to help us with the losers. And then you get him to participate in a comedy skit where you hang up on him because his team are a bunch of losers. And now you're just telling us, the podcast is here to hear your complaints, but we will hang up on you because we don't want to hear your complaints.
No, do you know what? And we need to laugh at it because I can see the tears coming down his eyes. So I really have to make this song cry and make it happy. It's hard. Like, this was us a whole year ago. Do you know what I mean? And probably like 2 weeks ago, and we're not fully out the mud. Just because we got that little, doesn't mean we're all fully out the mud. But I have respect for the for the Ferrari team. You know, I have massive respect for the Ferrari team. Everyone apart from Carlos Sainz, I have respect for. So it's very interesting to hear that perspective.
Well, look, there were some quotes, and actually that's a good segue. Mary, can you just get up this quote? Carlos Sainz, I think, labelled the decision to penalise him. I mean, look, we're here to discuss the Australian Grand Prix, and this was, an absolute madness of a Grand Prix. I will fast forward some other stuff, and I guess we'll get into that later. But let's go into the main meat of what happened after Kevin Magnussen hits the wall at around lap 54, I think, or whatever. And then there's a safety car period, and then they realise, okay, we need to red flag this race. And the red flag basically falls where on lap 57, with 2 or 3 laps left, essentially, including a formation lap. So it was going to be a 2-lap showdown to the finish. Before we get into the penalty decisions, I asked the question on our Twitter, what do you think should have happened with the end of the race? I obviously watched the race. I watched the race on another channel at 5 a.m. with no commentary and a lot of Disaronno and Coke. So my recollection until I watched the race back was I couldn't tell. So my vantage point wasn't the best, but obviously you guys were sober. I'll start with you, Vincenzo, because I know you've got some thoughts on it. What was your opinion, I guess, on the decision to run a red flag and therefore a 2-lap shootout? And was that the correct decision? I guess just that part before we get into the penalties.
Yep. I did not think that the last penalty was deserving, or the last red flag was really needed. I thought they could have finished it under safety car. The race would have ended the way it did, and that would have been fine because it's okay to end the race that way. Now, NASCAR has their overtime rules, which we just saw the race. Well, I was watching the NASCAR race last weekend, I believe it was.
Yeah, I think it was last weekend, wasn't it?
And they went into 3 or 4 overtimes because what NASCAR wanted to do was they want to end a race in under clear conditions on the track.
Yeah,
fine. But in a situation like Formula One, I feel like I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't really love it in the NASCAR. I'm just not as big a NASCAR fan, so it doesn't bother me as much. And those cars, I feel like you can jostle and bump and do things. They're a little tougher, so you can do those things because when you do restart, you clump everyone back together, and you're inviting that more physical driving. You have to drive with your elbows out a little bit more, right? When you're driving in traffic.
Yeah.
Well, in NASCAR, it's a little. I mean, they are literally made to be able to bump each other.
Yeah.
Here we can't. So every time you're going to put, especially I think the standing start bothered me more than a rolling start. And I think Max even said this, number one, he didn't feel they needed to go to a red flag on that last one. Totally agree.
Yeah.
Don't think that was needed. Send out a safety car, let them, let it either be a rolling restart or just end it under safety car conditions.
Yeah.
And you know what? I feel like the order at that point of time was completely indicative of the race itself. There would have been no problems. I don't think anybody would have had problems with that. I wouldn't.
Yeah.
My team would have had at least a 4th place finish. Alonso would have gotten his 3rd, Hamilton 2nd, which made me really happy to see him up there. And Verstappen, again, dominating drive. He deserved the 1st place at that point. But to go back, it was like, what are we doing here? Because now you're putting them in a position to have to go down that corner 1, that turn 1, where we've already seen plenty of issues. Now we're going to do it again. So I'll stop there because I know you want to go further.
No, that's great. Thandie, before we get on to the incident that occurred, and obviously speaking of science, but I wanted to ask you, we keep talking about the FIA, we keep talking about stewarding decisions and stewarding practices. I think I've heard you say before that F1 is kind of becoming entertainment over sport, and they're trying to manufacture things. Did you get a sense of that watching the race this weekend, with everything that kind of happened with the safety cars and the red flags?
Yeah, definitely. The amount of chaos that happened in that race is abnormal. There's a lot of things that could have been avoided. I'm actually looking at Sainz's quote, and he's saying, "I'm not going to speak or comment on it until I go to stewards and they revert this penalty." A furious Sainz claimed to Viaplay, "It's the biggest disgrace I've seen in sport for many years." Lol. And whatever I'm going to say, I'd rather not say it. I'd rather he say it. Say it with your chest. But he knows what he's going to say is the truth. However, we probably know about the lines of what he's going to say, but he won't say it. And that is what's wrong with Formula One. You make all that money and you're still scared to lose your seat. That's my...
Wow. That's your tuppence.
I'm not sure he's...
That's my tuppence.
I don't... I'll disagree respectfully. I don't think it's about losing a seat. I think it's the political game of him not wanting to look like... I mean, he kind of looks like a little whiny child. If you listen to the onboard immediately, he's like, "No, that's so unfair. I deserve it to be in the points." And it's like, which I don't disagree. He does, he deserves... I thought he did deserve to be in the points yesterday. It sounded a bit whiny the way he went about it. If we compare to some degree how Hamilton handled the 21 situation, I felt like that was a huge, he got royally screwed and didn't sound like that at all, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, all right, Carlos, what are you doing here? I mean, yes, he hit him. Yes, I didn't think the judgment was justified, especially the way they handled they rolled back the lap essentially.
Yeah.
But there was to me, the way I saw it was, it's like a lap one incident at the start, lap one, turn one, all these cars. This is what, unfortunately, and I also believe there was a quote that Max said. I don't know if someone could find that quote, but Max said it, where it's almost like F1 was inviting, or the FIA, the stewards, whoever, the race director, you're inviting that to happen because you're clumping everybody up and you're having them race down turn one. Now, there's a lot of folks that will say, well, Carlos was, that was bozo driving and he dive bombed into Alonso. Yes, maybe in an absolute lap 56 situation where they're running after 56 laps, sure. But in a situation where you're coming down, you got everybody bunched up, it's harder to pay attention to where everybody is at that moment. You're just focused on getting out of that corner. Mm-hmm. Yes, they're professionals. I know. I don't want to caveat everything, but
no. Look,
I think there should be
don't
some.
Feel like you have to caveat that.
No, not to you or to people listening that are like, oh well. No. But yes, I think that in that situation, you should look at it after the fact. Because even with Alonso and Aston Martin in that situation last race, they allowed him to talk and then they overturned it. Or, in other situations, and we heard this a lot in 21, it's like where the director's giving the teams, Red Bull and Mercedes, they're basically like, well, you guys can decide how you want to, do you want to swap positions or not? And it's like, well, wait a minute. Now, all of a sudden, you're not, there's no input from the driver, especially in lap 56. It took you 17 hours to figure out the Alonso situation. Now, all of a sudden, you just hand him this penalty. No problem.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say penalties should be treated differently, because that would be, I do believe the rules are rules and they should be followed. But in that situation, again, treat it like a lap one, turn one situation. you should look at now. If it happened in lap 1, I actually think it's even more different because if it happened lap 1, you've got an entire race to make up that 5-second penalty.
Yeah.
You had zero. There's nothing. There is zero opportunity for him to make that up. You've now taken him and given him a 7, 8 spot.
I think he went
penalty.
down to 12th. So
12th.
4th to 12th.
Out of the points, you lose all those points. 10 points or 12 points. What 10, 12 points? Championship points, and you had zero opportunity to do anything about it. I feel like, you know what? That's a situation that should not be happening. Yes, it would have royally screwed Alonso, of course, but you also are looking at the entirety of the situation. Now you've given Stroll and Alonso a benefit, right? They finished 3-4. Gasly and Ocon are now off because of whatever they decide to go do, and Carlos drops all the way back, and that's it. He finished last. I believe he finished last out of all the finishers yesterday.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
100%. And it's not good. He actually said, Max, I think if he could have had the safety car and then just have a normal rolling start, we wouldn't have had all these shunts, and then you have a normal finish. So they created the problems themselves at the end of the day. Yep. Where's that meme where it's like, the worst guy you know just made a great point?
Yeah, just made a great point.
That is Max.
But you know what? Respectfully, like, Max is now putting all these, like, opinions and little 2 pence in. But, bro, he's all the way over there. He could not give it. He is enforcing rules in a house that he does not even live in, you guys. So I guess that's probably why he cares, because he can't relate, but okay.
Yeah, no, he's literally like absent father. He'll dip in every now and then, check on it.
Did you do your homework?
And then just duck out again.
Do you know how to ride a bike?
No, Dad, I need you to teach me.
I need you to teach me. I'll come pick you up next weekend.
Thanks, Dad. What I was going to ask was, what's even mad? There's 2 things at play here. One, I think we're seeing a new power player in the F1 power rankings with Alonso and Aston Martin. With the penalty last race getting undone after the race, even though they did clearly touch the car, and that, under all other circumstances would count as working on the car. And then this race, them kind of appealing over the radio to get Sainz the penalty and for them to take the race back. I mean, if we look at it, Logan Sargent went zooming into the back of Nick De Vries. There was no penalty. Pierre Gasly had one of the most unsafe returns I think I've ever seen onto his own teammate. There was no penalty. And I think I read somewhere that it's just purely, sometimes they don't do penalties when it's on your teammate. I don't know if that's
the reasoning, because I had a problem with that. And the reason, there's 2 things, right? Someone said that, well, they can't penalize cars that aren't racing because they both knock themselves out. So that's the ultimate penalty. Right. The other thing was the FIA, the team said they almost like allow the team to deal with it. Oh, well, because it's team on team, it's, that's your issue. Like that's,
You tell them off at home.
I mean, still a driver. So, yeah.
Yeah, that is quite interesting, isn't it?
Sorry, after you, Thandie.
No, I'm just commenting on what Vincenzo just said. Like, that is quite interesting that they're just told to deal with it on their ones in their own teams, which is a bit controversial because certain teams love certain drivers more than the other. But anyway, okay. Yeah.
Well, look, Mario just told us in the chat here. So when it's team on team, both drivers come to go to the stewards and accept responsibility. If both of them say we both have fault, then the FIA lets it go. But I mean,
what else are they going to say? If they're on the same team, what else are they going to say?
Yeah, like
they're going to say, well, yeah, we're both at fault.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like asking people to mark their own homework. So I mean, I don't. It feels like since I always say that I feel like Spa 21 was kind of like a point in time where the FIA and the stewarding decisions stopped making sense. And since then, we've had, Brazil 21, I think, Saudi 21 with the brake check and the deal or no deal. Then obviously Abu Dhabi. And then obviously like decisions that have happened last season, Suzuka, and everything that happened there. And now we're seeing this season with, the decisions with Alonso last week or last race. And now this race with decisions to, the Alex Albon issue, I think they were saying they red flagged it because of gravel, and they wanted to make sure they could clear the gravel, and you're like, oh, okay. And then you've got the safety car decisions now, where they could have just ended it under safety car, but they didn't. But then they restart the race, but then they don't even take the lap back, so people get penalties for stuff that happened on that lap, but the order is restored to the order that was before the lap, which doesn't make sense. None of this makes sense. They want an entertaining package, but they're now conflating safety rules with entertainment, and that doesn't make sense at all. And anyone who gets into this sport must be looking at this sport like, this shit doesn't make any sense. And even when I watched the race back, I was perplexed at what happened on Sunday. And they just need to, if they're gonna do stuff for entertainment, just let us know. Like I keep saying on the show, don't piss on my shoes and tell me it's raining. If it's done, if it's like for entertainment, then let me know so I know I'm watching something fugazi. But if it's for safety, then make it for safety. And I don't know. That's what I had to get out.
I thought the Albon penalty the Albon red flag was okay. After you kind of played it back and you saw the big dust kind of cloud and the drivers couldn't even see. I mean, he bounced back into the track. So that one I understood after really watching. I said, okay, that makes sense. And I could see why you'd say that's a good move. But the other ones are just, I don't know. They felt less warranted and more like, hey, we want to make this as exciting as possible. Because the race otherwise, if you take the red flag situations away, I wouldn't say the race was super exciting, right? It wasn't like this. The start was great. It was awesome seeing Max get overtaken by the Mercedes. I was awesome. I was cheering the hell out of that. I was like, this is cool, right? I mean, they took off. George was shot out of a cannon. Absolutely incredibly. Lewis had a great drive. Everything, I was like, okay, this is good. But other than that, it wasn't like the race had something going on. So what are they, you start to look at now we're going to red flag races. And if I'd like to see if that becomes a trend, right? First race in history to feature 3 red flags in a race.
3 red flags. The first one. Fucking hell, mate.
First one,
first ever.
And it would be Australia.
Well, we don't have a race for a month now, or 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
It's a spring break. So again, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but you start thinking like, okay, were they trying to make this super exciting because they know they have a 3-week gap in between? You have to get people excited for what's going to happen at Baku, another street track, and I'm like,
look how excited you're literally making Thandie so excited. Look how she's literally like nodding her head like the Churchill dog. I can't believe this.
He's been drinking
are you happy with
the
the conspiracy
cuckoo
theories,
juice.
Thandie?
Oh, he's been drinking from the fountain of madness, and I love it because that's what you need to be. You actually have to have your eyes open. If I start bringing in equations of Australia, why Australia, you guys call me mad, but it could actually be true. And Vincenzo, I do not dispute anything you've just said at all. It makes complete sense to me, sir. So yes, continue.
I hope I'm wrong. I hope it has nothing to do with anything. And that's the fan in me. The fan, that's the fan of a single team in me. The fan of the series as a whole. I look at it and I say, this really feels unpolished. You call yourself the pinnacle of motorsport, and this just feels very rough, very almost like it's a brand new sport. Let's figure out how to do things.
Yeah.
We don't know how to interpret our own rules. We don't. I mean, the NFL, American football, they had this challenge, and they probably, I think, still do. for the longest time with what constitutes a catch. And it seemed like for a long time, every game that you would watch had some critical moment come down to a player making a catch that is obvious to everybody. But then all of a sudden the referees go and say, well, we have to take a look at it because the ball slightly moved before he dropped to the ground. And if it did, then we have to call it a no catch. And so they would go. I mean, this happens in football as well with VAR and offside.
Yeah, VAR,
where the fingernail,
penalties.
he's got a hangnail and it's off. Oh, well, that's offside. Well, and that's what it feels like is happening with the pinnacle of motorsport. We're over analyzing every little thing. Then yesterday with Max was all of a sudden people are paying attention. Not that people were never paying attention to this, but the starting boxes because of the Alonso situation. Now I saw a lot of folks online complaining that Max was over the box, even though his tires were touching the line. Yeah, there was all of a sudden people are interpreting this, and it's like. This is what I feel like the inconsistency of the FIA and the understanding the regulate. This is what it does. People start finding any little thing they can and complain. So now you have a fan base that's just making shit up, right? Putting it out there. But this is how your sport becomes perceived because reality is how your fans of your sport or series talk about you. That's your brand. And this goes for marketing as well, right? How people talk about your product, that's your brand. Not what you think that's not what you think you're saying. And so that's where I'm like, F1 has really got to reel it in. I almost feel like there's got to be an F1 FIA battle coming up at some point because FIA is making F1 look stupid and devaluing this product that Liberty Media is trying to prop up. Well, you can't do that when people are, I think calling the sport dumb, boring. They don't even know rules. Like, what am I watching for? Well, viewership starts to decline, and then it's like no one cares about it. Now we're back in 2017 all over again.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? I think
I would rather have 2017 rules, to be fair. Just saying.
I'd rather have 2017 rules, but I don't want 2017. To be fair, 2017 racing was okay, but what I was going to say, kind of on that kind of level, was that 2021 they had such an opportunity, and if they had just followed their own rules in 2021, there wouldn't be this big kind of, I guess, controversy over how that ended. And I think this big mistrust with the FIA that a big portion of fans have. And I think what's happened is, I think a lot of people used to think, Hamilton fans or Mercedes fans just don't like the FIA because of what's happened in Abu Dhabi, and, the FIA, they have a hard job, etc., etc. But I think slowly but surely, the conversations that Hamilton fans have been having about the FIA and how inconsistent they are and how wrong they are, those are now starting to seep into other fan bases who, week after week, someone else gets messed over, the sport in general starts to look bad. And like I say, that's what people are talking about now. News articles are saying what's going on. So if it's embedded in news articles, if it's embedded in the media, if it's embedded online, like you say, this is becoming what F1 is about. And instead of, I think, taking advantage of what could have been an incredible moment and an incredible season and going forward, we now have a series where I think the officiating and the out of track stuff dominates more than the product on track, which is a shame. Right at this point, we're going to go and do stars of the day, donkey of the day. You may hear an advert here. So, welcome back if you're still watching. Make sure you're giving us a 5-star review. Subscribe to the channel. Give us a like and Apple Podcast reviews. That was all over the place. But just support us and let people know that we're sick. Word of mouth works as well. I will start with Thandie. Can I have your first star of the day, please? From the Australian Grand Prix.
I am going to go with Lewis on his first podium, the first podium for Mercedes of the season. We're hoping it's not the final one. We're hoping we get races more like that. Obviously, I hated the fact that, you know, a lot of this race was rigged in a lot of, you know, restarts, a lot of random restarts, a lot of stuff that didn't need to happen, which can, you know, sometimes make us question if someone should be where they are. But no doubt in my mind, to be fair, Lewis's second restart, guys, you should have seen the man was on Vim and he was definitely doing what he needed to do. So I'm going to give Lewis my donkey of the week, the month, the week, star of the day, star.
No, look.
Star.
Lewis was incredible this weekend. That start off the line, going on the inside of Max, who was not happy. I think, you know, there was a quote from Max where he was like, you know, the rules of engagement have changed for this season. You're supposed to leave people room on the outside. And he is now aware of that. You know, he feels that he got run out. And so he's going to do that before. Not that he do that again. Sorry, not that he needs an excuse to be an absolute terrorist. But there you go.
Mario's just added in that Lewis Hamilton becomes the first driver in Formula One history to score a podium in 17 consecutive seasons. So there you go. Even though, you know, he is obviously in a very rubbish car, which I would like to say now, and I can confidently say, I have been saying since we started this season, that I definitely think this is a way better car than last year. A lot of people have had their doubts. I think this car is better than last year's, but that's just me saying that. Why? You don't look very happy, Nyasha.
I'm reserving judgment on that statement until the next race.
Right. Okay. That is fine.
Sorry. That was my thinking face. Sorry.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So Lewis is definitely the guy for me. Yeah. Oh, and I also will give a little nod to Pierre Gasly for getting away with murder, because we saw you, but nobody else saw you. So congratulations.
Look, just because you didn't get penalized doesn't mean you didn't get caught. Vincenzo, I guess any thoughts? I know you mentioned it earlier. Actually, let me ask you something. As an outsider, earlier you mentioned political natures of supposed second drivers or teammates to the main star and radio messages used to kind of gain power, which kind of reminded me of one George Russell, and the radio messages sent at the start of the race when I think he said, Mario get this up, but he was like, you know, you're telling me to preserve my tires or manage my tires, but I've got my teammate attacking me. What do you want me to do? You just rolled your eyes there for the people on podcast. So I guess, what are your thoughts on? I'd love to get your thoughts on that situation, and you know, but I guess your thoughts on George Russell, because I feel like him and Sainz have that kind of, I have something to prove, and I'm you know, almost like a self-preservation thing in common.
There's a couple things that I'll say before going into that. I think, and they're about Charles and Lewis. Charles is the let's say he's the man there, right? We know he's the golden boy. He is the future of the team when Sainz joined. So you're already kind of behind a little bit as the second driver. Same thing with Russell. Hey, you're joining a team with the greatest driver of all time, and you now have to prove your value. Now, of course, prove your value on the track with your driving. Let your driving do the talking. But you have to. You can't just lay down. As a driver, you need to. Those radio communications are very important. You know, you set the tone for how you want the team to also treat you. Do you know what are you going to be forceful? Can you make decisions? Are you just going to lay down? Well, no driver is going to lay down. Remember, there's only 20 of these people in the world that get to drive in Formula One. So as someone who is pretty competitive, myself, like I would never say to any of the drivers, well, just because you're number 2, like I don't want you to be forceful or have that passion or have that. So you already, as a fan, whether you're a Lewis fan or a Max fan or a Ferrari fan or a Charles fan, you have to know that the other driver's always going to be driving with that mentality, that number 1 mentality. All of these guys should. And the ones that don't, their careers don't last long.
Yeah.
So there's that. George, same thing. I mean, he's not coming in to play second fiddle to Lewis. I never thought that he was. Do I think that it's clear that Lewis is number 1? Yes, based on history, of course. But George shouldn't drive like he's not fighting for that number 1 spot, right? And he shouldn't act like that either. You also don't want a situation like Lewis had in the past. So how do you avoid that? That's something for the team, I think, to figure out. And I do believe there should be some sort of, while it may not be, this is number 1, this is number 2, maybe each race is a little bit different, right? We're going to approach this race differently. Where I think teams or strategies get really confusing, and Ferrari does this all the time, is putting both drivers on the exact same strategy, because now you're almost asking for these problems, because of course, and I don't know what the situation was with George and Lewis that time, if they were on the same strategy, the same time. I didn't pay attention to that, but it's happened with Ferrari where it's like they're both on the same strategy to start the race, they're both on the same tires. There's no way, they're both very quick. All these drivers are very quick, right? We're racing within thousandths of a second, tenths of a second. So if both drivers are within thousandths of a second per lap, each delta is they're going around the track at the same speed. How can you expect them to be like, well, I'm slower, so I'll give him my space? Yeah. Well, no, we're both lapping at the same speed. Why am I going to give up my position? Because for what? For what reason? So that's also, I'll say all that. George, he does sound kind of annoying in his race calls sometimes. I will tell you that. It's almost like
for that. I'm not gonna lie.
He does a little. He sounds a little annoying sometimes. Just because it's like that the whole PR63 thing. I'm like that. I understand the nickname more and more every time I hear his radio calls. He's like, well, what about the rain should be coming now, and I think it's going to be around, and it's. And they're like, no, George, no, you're good. Just keep going. Well, what about Alonso's penalty? He's got a penalty. Well, he already served that, George. Don't worry about it. But this is how these drivers. I will say this. I think this is how these drivers should be thinking. They should always be with the mentality of, I'm number 1. I want to win the race.
Yeah. No, for sure. I don't doubt that. Thandie, anything quickly to add on that before we go to Vincenzo?
Not at all. Not at all.
Not at all. She has said everything she needs to say about one George Russell. Vincenzo, who I know probably Donkey today will probably be easier for you to choose, but who was your star of the day?
I was going to say Lewis if I went first, so I won't say Lewis now just because you've already said it, and I do believe Lewis was that number 1. But I'm gonna look at. Even though Stroll knocked Leclerc out, I thought he had a really good drive after that situation. Again, that was that first lap, first turn. Yes, it's your fault, but what are you going to do in that moment? All the cars are so bunched up. So I will give him a pass on that for the rest of his performance. I thought was really good. And he's been so consistent. Aside from a reliability issue, he's been really consistent this year. I think he gets a lot of shit for being, Lawrence Stroll's son, but his performance, Latifi, you want to call Latifi a pay driver, right? Because he brought in all this money, but he was an absolute ass. I think Stroll proves that he can drive a car, and he does pretty well at it. And now with another driver like Alonso, not taking away from Vettel at all, but I think Alonso is clearly still firing at that I want to win a World Drivers' Championship. mentality. I think that's really helping Lance, and I hope that he continues that. So I'm gonna go with Lance as my start, and honorable mention to Checo, because yes, the car is an absolute rocket ship, but he was watching him pass some of those cars was like, wow, I see what you're doing there.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Checo looked good. Checo looked good.
So I'll get back to that in a second. Thandie.
Yeah.
Do you think that Lance will now have like F1 as his passion now that he's got like a good car and a teammate that will actually, you know, spur him on, or does he still want to be a painter?
You know, sometimes I'm backstage at like festivals and shows and stuff, and there's always like, I'm working in the music industry, and there's always like, you'll meet like a team and an artist, and you'll meet like their team, and you'll know like that's the manager, that's manager times 2, that's tour manager, you know, and then you'll meet someone and you'll be like, so what do you do? Like, what are you doing here? You know? And that was always Lance Stroll, just really happy to be there, wearing the fan t-shirt, wearing the staff, you know, the crew stuff, you know. And then, you know, one day you'll go to the same festival again 2 years later, and he'll be like, yeah, you know, I've started to write now. The label have actually taken me on, you know, I'm writing a few songs, you know. I actually attribute it to that one hit. And you're like, oh, so you hung out enough for you to then become something within the team. And I'm so happy for Stroll. Listen, this is not even me like pissing on Stroll's happiness. I'm happy that he got that one little bit in the chorus that gives him, you know, his accolades. And I'd love to see like Stroll absolutely succeed. As I said, like, imagine, you know, you've bought your son a team and now you get to tell him like, son, your teammate is about to be Fernando Alonso. Come on, like, I am so incredible, right? Make sure you get your pictures before, you know, he hates you. Anyway, I'm happy for him. So there's nothing actually wrong with it. You know, you get people like that in all industries. So yeah, happy for Stroll. Do I think Alonso will stab in the back? 100%. There's no saying Alonso won't stab him in the back. There's no saying Alonso's looking at him like a teammate. There's no saying Alonso's looking at him like first driver. So there's that. However,
so
it is quite.
Is he really stabbing him in the back? What's he stabbing in the back for? Alonso's number one.
He will happily do that, Vincenzo. He will happily do that. There's no way in saying. I'm hypothesizing what can happen in the future, or should I say, will happen in the future, if he is given the opportunity. And I'm not lying about this. Come back to this conversation and we'll chat. But what I'm saying is that, you know, for Stroll, it's a nice experience from being back of the freaking line that he was last year and the year before that.
For sure. And look, Vincenzo, you know, and a really good choice. And look, when he had a good car in the pink Mercedes, he had a pole position in great, you know, changing conditions or slick conditions, oily conditions in Turkey, and he led a large portion of that race. He's had podiums, so he's no bum. Like, you know, like I said, Latifi was a bum. I think Mary's put a stat in here that, you know, Latifi scored 9 points to Stroll's 127. You know, Latifi is. You really
wanted to just throw that in, like. Sprinkle that in. Latifi was a bum.
Let me say that. Bum. Absolute bum. And I'll say that gladly. Look, respectfully, obviously, I can't drive a car. You know, I can't drive a Formula 1 car. Obviously, Latifi can. But in relation to everyone else, he was not great. So, my driver or starter day is... it's a tough one. It's a tough one. I'm going to say Nico Hülkenberg.
Really?
Purely because I think you know what, that Haas, you just don't know what the level is, because Schumacher was dunking on Mazepin and we're like, oh, Schumacher's pretty good, and then Magnussen comes in and he dunks on Schumacher and you're like, okay, Magnussen's pretty good, and then Hülkenberg comes in, now he's dunking on Magnussen, and I don't know if that car has more pace in it, or if Hülkenberg's just doing a great job, or Magnussen's just not. At
one point, Hülkenberg was in fourth.
He was, and that's why they were appealing the race decision, because they wanted to get the third place off of Fernando Alonso, because if the results were kind of pulled back a lap, or they just kind of kept the order after the crash or whatever, then Fernando Alonso finishes probably in fourth or so. Yeah, I'm going to say Hulkenberg 3 Q1s in a row. I think in a Haas, that's great. Q3, sorry, in a row in a Haas, that's great. I was going to say Yuki for finally getting a point, but I just think what Hulkenberg's doing. I was slating him. I think I have to apologise. I didn't think he'd be on piss this year. So I think from where my estimation was to where it is, I think Nico Hulkenberg, I apologise. You're a competent driver in what looks like a fairly competent car. Vincenzo, did you agree with that? I saw your face. Don't know if you were.
No, I like it. I was actually impressed. He totally slipped my mind.
Yeah.
And I for the same reasons, I would have loved to see the race continue after that slight shunt, Sainz knocking off Alonso. That would have likely given Carlos a penalty, and Hulkenberg would have gotten a podium, I believe.
That was Sainz,
so.
Yeah.
Yes, I like it. That's a good one. I was actually shocked you didn't say Lando Norris to an extent, because I thought he had a pretty good drive. There's no question that McLaren is an absolute. That's a true donkey, right?
Yeah.
But him and Piastri got his first points in his home circuit, so that was nice too. But I just thought you were gonna say Lando. That's why I had.
You know what? As much as people online keep peddling about, there's no British bias. like honestly, there's Hamilton bias on this podcast, but British bias, I'm not that fussed about everyone else. Oh, I feel like I remember the conversation we had now, where you were like, you don't trust Lando Norris. Who said they didn't trust Lando Norris? Was it Thandie? And then Vincenzo, you were unhappy about the fact that we didn't trust Lando Norris. See,
I'm not a Lando fan.
Yeah,
I don't love Lando Norris, but driving a crappy car shows character. So if you know what, I got to give him credit where credit's due.
Yeah,
100%.
I can give you that. To be fair,
okay. Yeah, Lando. Yeah, Lando. I'll give him that. Donkeys. Okay. Oh, there's so many. Vincenzo. Donkey of the day. I just. Who are you going to choose for your
aside
donkey
from
of the
the
day?
race director? I would say Sainz. I just absolutely Sainz. I have to, just purely from that last moment.
Yeah.
I don't want to go into depth. You just.
It's.
I'm gonna have to side with you, Vincenzo. To be fair, definitely Sainz for me as well.
Mm-hmm. I don't. It's okay.
I'm not sure if mine was predictable, but he just drove right into it, you know.
Ha ha ha
ha. The problem with Sainz is that Leclerc has a mistake in him, but Charles' mistakes are that he will, on his own, just run himself off the road. And obviously, I don't know if that's better or worse or whatever, but, he will have his bozo gene will just activate, and, like we saw in France and like we've seen in Azerbaijan coming up, pray for him. But, he can just crush out on his own, Imola. But Carlos Sainz in wheel-to-wheel battle, sometimes it can leave a little bit to be desired. Mm-hmm. And that mistake at the weekend, it smelled of desperation. I'm not going to lie. It felt a bit desperate.
Yeah.
Is that what you thought?
I don't disagree.
Okay, yeah, sorry. So no, right, we're gonna move on. I am gonna say that my donkey of the day. Oh man, I mean, you know what? For I want to say Alex Albon because he threw away like some really good points. But I don't know if there was an issue on the car before he crashed it. So I don't want to like say Alex, but Alex Albon for crashing it. I'm gonna go with Logan Sargent. I know there was like smoke. The sun was low, you know, but I mean, it reminded me of Bottas in Turkey, the way he just nerfed Nick De Vries completely out of the race there. It was like really bad. So I'm gonna go with Logan Sargent. Purely just was very amateur hour in my eyes, and a shame as well because he started well. So yeah, I'm not gonna go any more on that. That is that. I guess, Vincenzo, before we let you go,
Yes.
Hopes for the future. What are your hopes for the future? What would you want from this season? What would represent, from this point, knowing what you know now, what represents success this season?
For Ferrari or just in general?
For Ferrari, yeah, for Ferrari.
I would love to see them. I would love to see things run a lot, more smoothly. Communication, better communication, radio calls that are on time. Strategies that make sense. There's no reason why those of us sitting and watching at home should be able to have better strategy calls than the team itself.
Yeah.
So I know that's not really something like quantifiable. It's more qualitative, but it is. It's when you watch it, I would rather see them finish, third, fourth, fifth. But things went well. Maybe they just don't have the pace, right? It's just not there. Then us be able to taste victory, but lose out on things because of these stupid mistakes, which is what happened last season, right? So many idiotic mistakes that seem to pile up, especially with the strategy. So for me here on out, I would love to see a Leclerc win in Monaco. The kid, I think he needs that for his own confidence.
Yeah.
That I would love to see. That would be a one of those things that you check off and say, you know what, not a bad season. I would love to see them do well in Italy, in the races in Italy. That I think the Tifosi need. But yeah, I mean, again, wins are very hard to ask for right now. So I would say that I just want to see the team operate smoothly. I want to know that Vasseur is running a tighter ship than it felt like Binotto was running, and I want to know that there's some semblance of leadership in the team.
Yeah.
Again, these are all qualitative, nothing quantitative, because how do you say leadership is quantitative? I don't think it is. So, but I didn't think that Binotto necessarily had it, and it proved it time and time again. That's it. I don't think Sainz will be around long term, so it doesn't really matter. But if they want to have a driver that is going to be with them like Leclerc, then they need to start just doing things that instill confidence in the people that are in the seats. Those two drivers that are in their seats, they have to be confident when they get in that car that they're going to get the right strategies, they're going to get the right calls. It won't be constant mistakes. Things that happen on the track. That's fine. So I'm okay with those. But listen, I'll be really excited as of right now if we finish third in the Constructors' Championship. I would be very excited.
That would be.
But I realistically, I think fourth is where we're gonna be. And if McLaren starts figuring things out, we might be fighting for 5. So
don't worry. I don't think they will.
No. Zach Brown will keep getting sponsors, and no one will understand it. But
no, fair play. Well, look, thank you for coming. Oh, fuck. We've got one announcement. Actually, Thandie, quickly. Tell the world.
Hi guys, welcome to Quick Stop F1 podcast, where we give you online content, but we also give you in-person content. And with that being said, I would like to introduce to you the arrival of Quick Stop Live Season 3. Oh no, Episode 3, Season 3. Me and Nyasha are super excited to be collaborating with Everyman Cinema to bring you our biggest show yet. Plenty tickets, but again, not enough tickets for you to hit my phone up and say, Thandie, can you get me in? Because I cannot. So tickets go on sale this Thursday. So you guys will be listening to this. This is released tomorrow. So it will be this week, this Thursday, which is the 5th?
6th.
It's the 6th of April. Bright and early, make sure you get them, because once they're gone, they're gone. I can guarantee we've kept some themes from our previous venue. You know, we're always going to feed you. You're never going to leave with a hungry stomach. You're always going to drink. You know, we're Zimbabwean, but this time it's a bigger venue and it's going to be so much more exciting. And we have a lot of like exciting surprises for you guys. So make sure you hit up that ticket link and don't hit me or Nyasha in the DMs about free tickets, because you're not getting them.
Thank you very much. So yeah, I don't know if it was clear from that. Thank you for that. But we will be screening Brazil 21 in a cinema. So come and watch Brazil 21 with us. And obviously there'll be a live podcast afterwards. Free popcorn for every ticket and a free drink of your choice. All for you. So if you want to come, Vincenzo, we'd love you to come. Obviously it's a little bit far for you, but are you going to any of the races in America this year?
I am working on being at Miami and Vegas. I'm working on those. I'd like to go to Austin, so I'd like to go to all three of those. And I'm planning on Montreal, but I again just haven't figured out. So I'm trying to hit all of the North American races this year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, look, we're going to be in Austin and Vegas, so if you're around, I would love to see you and link up. But thank you so much for coming. Honestly, you're one of our most favourite guests. I'm going to give you a cheer properly this time.
Yeah, man.
Thank you. Much appreciated. Vincenzo, where can people find you online?
Twitter at Vincenzo Landino. That's the best place. That's where I'm pretty active and I usually respond. So I'm there.
Yeah, no, lovely. Sorry, Thandie, did you want to shower Vincenzo with praise?
I wanted to say Vincenzo is literally one of my favorite Formula One content creators or influencers. So big respect to you. Big respect for being like a Ferrari fan and like, you know, keeping the hopes up and always like keeping people entertained on his Twitter. And as I said, he is someone you need to definitely follow on Twitter for like insights and good opinions, because not everybody on Twitter has a good opinion.
Oh.
Yeah, no, for sure. Honestly, I love the breakdowns that you do about F1 in business and the F1 in America stuff and F1 in marketing. It's kind of opened my mind up in ways that I would not have had previously. So genuinely,
thank you.
Go and follow Vincenzo and follow us at Quickstop F1. Thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe, let us know below what you thought of the race, what you think of this podcast. And, you know, as seems to be the case when I go on other platforms, just let me know if you don't like me. So there's all of that there. And remember, no matter what life throws at you, keep it on the black stuff. Until next time, take care. Look, mate, if you've got this far, clearly you like what we do. So here's a link to subscribe to the Quickstop F1 family. Give that a click. And here's another link to some more cool on our channel. Sorry, cool stuff. And remember, no matter what happens, keep it on the black stuff. Click the stuff. Click the links. Click the links. Click the links. There. They're there.